Hello there, and welcome to this Wheel and Anchor webinar on our LiveAway trip to the island of Madeira. Now, you might not know much about Madeira. Perhaps in getting ready to watch this webinar, you looked it up on a map. A lot of people don't realize exactly where it is or who it belongs to or who actually lives there. I'm going to tell you all about Madeira, which is the island of eternal spring. It's actually a semi-autonomous island that belongs to Portugal. It's situated off the coast of North Africa, and it has a wonderful, mild climate all year round. Perfect place for a winter getaway instead of some of those usual spots that you might think of going to get away from Canadian winter. In this webinar, I'm going to tell you all about what this LiveAway is all about, what you can expect to experience, and why you should join us on this amazing winter getaway. If you are a regular viewer of our webinars, you can skip the next section by scrolling below this video. You'll see the chapters of this webinar, and you can skip ahead to the map and the day-by-day itinerary. But otherwise, if you're new to Wheel and Anchor, if you've never watched one of our webinars, I encourage you to listen to what I have to say about who we are and what makes us different. At Wheel and Anchor, we're more than just a travel company. In fact, we're a community of explorers from all across Canada. And what we have in common is a view that we're looking for the kind of experience that is a little bit more authentic and immersive, and not just touring around the typical tourist attractions. Of course, everyone wants to see the most famous attractions in any given place, but for us, there's a lot more to each experience that is a little bit behind the scenes, and a LiveAway is a perfect way to do just that. Our program is a comprehensive itinerary. It explores both Madeira and its sister island of Porto Santo as part of our post program, and there's lots of time built in for you to discover hidden gems, pursue your own interests, or just relax on the beautiful black sand beaches. If you value the camaraderie that comes from traveling with fellow enthusiasts, people who are like-minded just like you, and you enjoy a mix of both guided tours as well as independent exploration, well, then you've come to the right place. We have two key goals for all of our members at Wheel and Anchor, which are to be well-traveled and well-connected. And for us, being well-traveled isn't just about ticking off destinations on a bucket list, which is not to say that there's anything wrong with having a bucket list. We, as travelers, all have a list of destinations around the world that we would dream to travel to someday. But our definition is experiences that keep your curiosity alive, and they change your perspective on the world. Our Madeira LiveAway offers exactly that. It allows time to explore ancient laurel forests and sample unique Madeiran wines. At the same time, we're about becoming well connected. And that for us is about forging friendships that last beyond the duration of the trip. It's about having a network of fellow travel enthusiasts with whom you can share stories and plan future adventures. Our program gives you ample time to connect not only with your fellow travelers, but also with the local people and culture of Madeira. By joining us on this LiveAway, you'll have lots of opportunity to immerse yourself in the unique blend of Portuguese and Madeiran culture, exploring diverse landscapes from dramatic cliffs to lush forests, and creating lasting connections, all while enjoying the warmth and beauty of this enchanting island. Before we dive into the details of our adventure, let me introduce myself and a key member of our team. My name is Gordon Dreger. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor, and with over 3 decades of experience in crafting unique travel experiences for Canadians to all parts of the globe, I've personally curated this Madeira trip to ensure that it offers the perfect balance of structure and free time. Now, I have a wonderful team of people that support me on delivering all these lofty promises that I've talked about. But the person most important for you is Paula Sarnik. She is our lead trip specialist, and she'll be there to answer any questions that you might have and to get you signed up should you decide to join us on this trip. Our plan is quite straightforward today. I'm going to be your virtual guide, as it were, and I'm going to take you on a little journey around Madeira and what you can expect from this LiveAway trip, starting with the geographical overview, the map of where we're going, and then I'll cover the highlights of each day of this LiveAway. The first thing you need to know about Madeira is where it is. And if you look at the map that is in front of you, particularly the inset map, you can see the location of it relative to the continent of Africa as well as to Portugal itself. Madeira is actually an archipelago consisting of 4 islands, with Madeira itself being the largest and most populous. As I mentioned before, it's often called the island of eternal spring because it has a year-round mild climate. There's a diverse landscape ranging from lush forests to dramatic sea cliffs. And the nice thing about it is that everything is in relatively close proximity. In fact, due to a modern infrastructure of highways and tunnels and bridges, you can get from just about any point on Madeira to the other in about an hour and a half or so. We're going to be staying in just outside of Funchal, the capital city, in a wonderful area called the Lido, which is full of hotels and restaurants and condos all along the seafront, a beautiful big promenade from where you can walk to all kinds of interesting things to see, places to eat, and wonderful views of the Atlantic Ocean. So let's dive into the day-by-day details of our 15-day itinerary for this Madeira LiveAway. Your adventure begins as you fly into the airport, which is just to the west of the city center of Funchal. Now, there are lots of ways to get to Madeira, although there are no non-stop flights from Canada. There is a flight actually on Azorian Airlines, which leaves from Toronto, makes a stopover in Ponta Delgada, and continues on to Madeira. But there's a number of other options available to you. You can fly, obviously, via Portugal mainland, via Lisbon, or other gateways on the European continent. When you land at Funchal Airport and after you clear any immigration formalities, you'll be greeted by our private transfer service and whisked downtown to our hotel, which is a mere 20 to 30-minute drive from the airport. And you'll already get a glimpse of the fantastic views as you drive along the highway atop of the city of Funchal. Let me first of all say a few words about our accommodation for our program. We're going to be staying at the Villa Portomare complex, which is made up of 2 sister hotels that share the same gardens, pools, and facilities while keeping their own spaces. The complex itself is impressive. There's over 10,000 square meters of subtropical gardens, 5 swimming pools. Some of them are heated, some of them are not. Plenty of lounge chairs to go around. There's 4 restaurants with Mediterranean and international food, plus 3 bars, a spa, a gym, tennis courts, squash courts, pretty much everything that you could possibly need for a 2-week stay in Madeira. It's the kind of place where you can be as active or as lazy as you want. There are 2 options for our stay here at the Villa Portamare complex. The first one is the Suite Hotel Eden Mar, which is the first of the hotels in the complex, located in the East Wing. It's surrounded by tropical gardens, has shops and restaurants just outside the door. The studios are very well sized and were very recently renovated and offer a comfortable feel. Each of them has a kitchenette with a stove, fridge, and a microwave, so you can cook if you like. And there's also a balcony and a bathroom that has a bathtub. The Hotel Porto Mare, on the other hand, is more of a hotel configuration in terms of the rooms. It's right by the sea, separated only by a promenade that's lovely for a morning walk or an evening drink with a view. The grounds actually have 500 different types of flowers and trees, making it one of those places that feels green no matter what season it is. The rooms are understated, soft colors, light colored furnishings. Each one has a furnished balcony with a sea view, a wonderful marble bathroom, and a minibar. While the whole complex has all the amenities that you could possibly need, so that you actually don't even need to leave the place, of course, there are a number of other restaurants, bars, and other facilities in the immediate area. On our first full day on the island, we will have our orientation excursion, which will have you get a chance to understand where the most necessary things are for your 2-week stay. It's on this day that you'll also meet our wonderful local guide and our wheel and anchor ambassador in Madeira, Rubina. She has been delivering our LiveAway programs here since we originally started up some years back. Rubina is going to take you around the local area immediately around the hotel to show you where you can find bank machines, a laundromat, some of her favorite restaurants, as well as a number of other things that you may want to see and do during your stay in Madeira. She'll show you the promenade, which extends all the way from the central part of Funchal out to the fisherman's village not far away from the city. To cap off our orientation, we have a special spot where we'll have a wonderful view overlooking the city and enjoy a little welcome cocktail, perhaps of one of the island's most known beverages. The first of our included excursions will take us to the east side of the island, one of the most popular circuits from previous trips. The island of Madeira has vistas and viewpoints at about every corner. And on this trip, we are going to see a good number of them, starting out at the northeast side of the island, where we'll get some incredible views of the Peña da Guia, the Eagle's Rock, which is a massive rock formation rising dramatically from the mountains at sea. It's made out of basalt and it's 580 meters high. And it's really been a landmark for sailors approaching the island, particularly from Porto Santo, for literally centuries. We'll head over into Ribeiro Frio, a cool valley which has streams, trout pools, and part of this Laura Silva forest that I've talked about, which makes it a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's here that we'll have a chance to go on the Vereda dos Balcões Levada walk. And this will be our first chance to see one of the levadas. It won't be long. This is going to be short, about 45-minute stroll. These are centuries-old irrigation channels that bring the water from the high north mountain side of the island to the drier parts on the south side of the island. The trail leads to a viewpoint, which is actually the one you can see here in the photo, where you can see Madeira's central mountains from this natural amphitheater around what's called the Ribeiro de Matada Valley. We'll also get a chance to go up Pico da Herrera, which is the third highest peak on the island, about 1,800 meters above sea level. And it'll be remarkably cooler up there, as you can imagine, when you go up that far in elevation. So depending on the day, hopefully the views are good. Sometimes the clouds roll in and out, but you'll have incredible views over the island. And you can even see Porto Santo from there far on the horizon. We'll end up our day in Machico, which is where the Portuguese explorers first landed on the island back in 1419, which was really the beginning of history in Madeira. This historic town, which was once the first capital, logically, since that was the first place they landed, is a good way to get a glimpse into the island's past. And we'll have one more viewpoint here at Pico de Facho, where we'll get some views of the amazing eastern landscape, which is incidentally a spot I always suggest visitors to go and do a hike on the oldest, geologically oldest part of the island, the eastern extremity, which extends out to a magnificent peninsula. And of course, back to the hotel in the evening. The next day of our trip will be yours to explore at your own pace, but if you're a foodie, I highly recommend considering this excursion. Today, we'll embark on an optional excursion that's a true feast for our senses. It'll explore the flavors and traditions of Madeira through food and wine. We'll start our day at one of Madeira's historic wineries, where we'll delve into the fascinating world of Madeira wine production. The winery we'll visit has been aging Madeira wine using traditional Cantero method for 7 generations. This unique aging process involves storing wine barrels in warm lofts, allowing for slow oxidation that deepens the wine's complexity over a period of decades. Did you know that this Cantero method was actually developed as a way to replicate the effects of long sea voyages on Madeira wine? In the 16th century, wines that had traveled across the ocean in ships' holds were found to have a superior taste, which led to the development of this land-based aging technique. From there, we'll head over to Fabrica Santo Antonio, which is the oldest confectionery in Madeira, operating since the latter part of the 19th century. This charming little establishment still uses 20th century cases and scales, which gives us a bit of a glimpse into Madeira's culinary past. We'll sample their famous cookies. There's sometimes a lineup out the door, as well as the traditional Madeira sugarcane honey cake known as bolo do mel, which is a rich spiced cake that is one of Madeira's oldest desserts. We'll then head over to the Funchal Farmers Market, where we'll have a guided fruit tasting. This market is a feast for the eyes, which is it has all kinds of exotic fruits, fresh seafood, flowers, all and vendors that are dressed up in traditional dress. Here, we'll conclude our gastronomic adventure with a shared platter featuring the island's signature dish, black scabbard. The fish itself is not pretty. In fact, it's one of the ugliest fishes you've ever seen. But as you can see from the picture, served up on a plate with some bananas and some delicious passion fruit sauce, it is absolutely delicious. This black scabbard fish is not caught in a lot of places around the world, partly because it swims at depths of 1,000 meters, but it's become a staple of Madeiran cuisine for centuries. There'll be another day to explore Madeira on your own, but for those who are onophiles, you might want to participate in this one. One of our most popular excursions on Madeira, and my personal favorite, takes us up to this beautiful valley on the north side of the island. Here we'll visit the winery Quinta do Barposano. We'll have an explanation of the various varietals of wine that are produced and an opportunity to taste each of these delicious wines. It'll all be accompanied by a delicious lunch of espetada, which is a local dish of beef roasted on skewers of laurel branches. On today's excursion, you have the opportunity to sample one of Madeira's other famous levadas. As I mentioned before, these centuries old irrigation channels, some of which date back to the 16th century, have been ingeniously repurposed as hiking trails, which offers a distinctive way to explore the island's diverse landscapes. The Lavada de Roferta, which is the one that we'll be hiking on today, is one of the gentler Lavada walks on the north side of the island. In total, it's about 6 kilometers, and it makes for an ideal introduction to Lavada walking and is suitable for most fitness levels. As we embark on the journey, let me give you a bit of a picture on what Levada walking in Madeira is truly all about. Imagine walking alongside a narrow water channel carved into the mountainside. The path is generally flat as it follows the gentle gradient of the water flow, which makes it less strenuous than typical mountain hikes. As we traverse through the landscape, you'll notice how the Levada winds through a variety of terrains, from lush forests to open agricultural fields. The Referta Lavada takes us through some of Madeira's most picturesque northern villages. Along the way, we'll see a whole array of local crops, fruit trees, vegetables, and legumes, all cultivated by farmers who have worked this land for generations. It's not uncommon for friendly locals to greet passing hikers like ourselves and offer us a glimpse into the island's warm culture. One of the highlights of this walk is the breathtaking view at Peña da Guia, or Eagle Rock. This massive basalt monolith rises dramatically up to 580 meters above sea level, and it dominates the coastline and offers a stunning backdrop of our walk today. We'll also notice how the Levada system has shaped Madeira's landscape and agricultural over the centuries. The channels have made it possible to cultivate areas of the island that would otherwise be too dry, which has completely transformed the ecology and the economy of the island. While the Referta Levada is relatively easy, you should note that some of the levadas can be more challenging. Some of them have quite narrow paths along cliff edges or through long, dark tunnels. Our chosen route today is perfect because it's good for those who are new to Levada walking and prefer a more relaxed pace. The views are spectacular, so you'll definitely want to have your camera charged and ready to go. And at the end of the walk, as a treat, we'll have the opportunity to visit a local bar where you can sample the famous poncha. If you haven't already had it by this point in the trip, this is a traditional Madeiran drink made with sugarcane rum from nearby Porto da Cruz. It's the perfect way to cap off our Levada adventure and toast to the unique experiences that Madeira has to offer. Today, we head off to the west side of the island on our included excursion. One of the highlights of the day will no doubt be our visit to Cabo Girau, which features some of the highest sea cliffs in Europe. In fact, the observation platform has a glass floor, so you can look straight down some nearly 600 meters to the coastline below. From there, we head up to the Pol de Serra Plateau and continue on to the natural lava pools at Porto Moniz. This is another one of my favorite spots. They have these incredible sea baths. These are artificially created pools immediately adjacent to the ocean that are full of seawater. And when the sea is calm enough, you can swim in these pools just like in a natural swimming pool. And it is a whole heck of a lot of fun. We have a delicious lunch overlooking Porto Moniz and the north coast before making our way back to our hotel in Funchal. We've left the next day completely at leisure for you to explore on your own. By this time, you'll have acquainted yourself with enough of the island to have a sense of some of the things that you might do. For example, you might head up to the Laura Silva Forest, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a prehistoric forest that once covered much of southern Europe and North Africa, but it now only survives in a few places like Madeira and the Canary Islands. Of course, you might want to just kick back by the pool and order one of those Madeiran ponchas. But again, I warn you, they're stronger than they taste. Today's visit, another highlight. We head up to the village of Monte, high above the city of Funchal. Here we'll find an old manor house set amongst a spectacular botanical garden. An entrepreneur back in the 1980s converted it from the luxury hotel into a public spot that is truly incredible. And from here, we will then embark on the next exciting part of our day. Rather than taking the cable car back down the mountain, we'll get to experience the Carreros do Monte, a unique Madeiran tradition dating back to the early 19th century. These wicker sledges were originally invented as a quick means of transport for Monte's residents to reach Funchal below. Pushed and steered by two carreros dressed in traditional white outfits and straw hats, the sledges glide down steep, winding streets for a distance of about 2 kilometers. On this, our 10th day, we'll have another free day, or for those that wish, we've got another exciting excursion, this time to the southwest part of the island. And our first stop will be at Ponta do Pargo, which is a lighthouse which stands proudly at the westernmost point of the island, built back in the early part of the 20th century. It has guided ships safely into the harbor at Madeira for well over a century. Once again, a viewpoint 200 meters above the sea level, where you get incredible views out over the ocean. And from this angle as well, sometimes you can see Porto Santo. An interesting fact is that this lighthouse that we'll visit is actually the most visited in all of Portugal. Something like 15,000 people a year come specifically to see this famous lighthouse. We'll then head over to this lovely village of Farra de Ovella. The name means sheep landslide. Has an interesting origin because the legend is that the area was named after a tragic event where a landslide killed a sheep. That's how it became Sheep Landslide. But it's a quiet little village, and so it gives you a real taste of rural Madeiran life without the tourists of some of the other spots. And again, beautiful views. We'll head on over to Pau do Mar, which is a lovely little fishing village between some cliffs and the sea. This place also has an amazing history because it's where actually the settlement originally, the fishermen, sorry, originally settled. And so there's an old tuna canning factory that you can have a look at, which is no longer in use, but it was one time it was a sort of testament to the importance of the fishing industry. We'll also head over to Jardim do Mar, which is translated as Garden of the Sea, a 15th century town that has also seen all kinds of things. If the walls could talk, it's got lovely little picturesque streets and those classic cobblestone sidewalks. But what's most interesting is that even though it's a small little village, it actually once hosted the World Surfing Championship. And of course, if there's any kind of wind that day, you'll see these powerful waves that crash up against the coast, and have made it until today still one of the most popular surfing spots in Portugal, which is of course known for some pretty spectacular surfing spots on the mainland. You'll see on this excursion throughout a lot of the diverse landscapes from the southwest part of the island, the dramatic cliffs, the lush valleys, some amazing little beaches tucked away amongst all that, and the terraced farmlands. And that's, again, typical all throughout the island, but it's particularly evident here in the southwest. It's also the sunniest part of the island, so it's a good idea to not forget your sunscreen. Um, Here as well, not just here, in fact, just not far from the hotel, you'll see the island's famous banana plantations. And the Madeira bananas, which unfortunately we don't get at home, are typically smaller and sweeter than those that we will find on the shelves at supermarkets back home. But the banana industry is still a crucial part of the island's agriculture and economy. Our trip continues with our included North excursion, which once again has its fill of breathtaking vistas and viewpoints. In fact, we'll start off with a super steep cable car ride down to the Faja dos Padres, which is a little hidden agricultural oasis that was once tended to by Jesuit priests. And now, this secluded spot, which is accessible only by cable car, produces some of the most prized fruits on the island. The microclimate is so unique that certain grape varieties will only grow here and nowhere else on the island. From here, we head up to Sao Jorge, where we'll sample wines that are also only found in this region. And this is the interesting thing about Madeira is that all these microclimates and terroirs mean that different grapes can only grow in specific spots. This particular village's isolated position has meant that they've kept the same winemaking traditions that go all the way back to the 15th century. In fact, there's a legend that says that Shakespeare's Falstaff praised those very wines in his play Henry IV. From here, we go up to the a little bit north and east to Porto de Cruz, which is one where we'll find one of the last working sugarcane mills. And I always love this spot because the machines they use literally look like they come right out of the 19th century. We'll taste a 6-year-old rum and some sugarcane cookies. And what's interesting is that Madeira's sugar industry once rivaled its famous wine trade. And of course, being a European country with all the evolution, the production of sugarcane is not as important anymore. But back in the day, it was so prized that it was even used to sweeten Queen Elizabeth I's tea. We'll make our way back to Funchal, stopping at another viewpoint called Cabañas, where we'll have a clear view out to the sea. We'll see the Desertas Islands and possibly Porto Santo as well. And this is where Christopher Columbus once lived before embarking on his famous voyages. And I'll say a little bit more of that when I talk about our post-trip extension. And you can't really be on an island without taking the opportunity to go on a marine adventure like this. On this optional excursion, we'll embark on a 3-hour ride by catamaran, which will take us along the picturesque south coast. In fact, the vessel that we've chosen is the only hybrid electric catamaran on the island. So this reduces underwater noise and emissions, which means it's a more eco-friendly and wildlife-friendly experience. It also means that the likelihood of actually seeing dolphins and other cetaceans is much higher. There are a whole bunch of different marine animals that call these waters home. The location in the Eastern Atlantic means that it's an ideal habitat both for dolphins and whales because of these warm waters and abundant food sources. We might see bottlenose dark dolphins. In fact, we'll likely see them. With these any kind of whale watching, dolphin watching cruise, you can never 100% rely on the wildlife that it'll be there when you think it will. But there is a resident group that is often seen on this particular excursion. Pilot whales are also frequently encountered and likely to be spotted during our trip. If we're really lucky, we'll see the so-called Atlantic spotted dolphins, which are particularly known for their acrobatic displays. And that really makes a highlight when you see them flying out of the water. And the real prize that one might see would be sperm whales. They're often seen in the Madeiran waters. But there's a few other rare marine animals like the bride's whales or the Risso's dolphins. But beyond all the marine wildlife, we'll get to see some breathtaking views of the island from the sea. The volcanic origin of it all has created a stunning landscape where these lush green mountains plunge into the deep blue Atlantic. We'll pass by the Cabo Girao cliffs that we will have seen on one of the excursions, which give a really amazing experience of the rugged beauty of the island. You've got the 2 final days to explore Madeira at your own pace. And by now, depending on what excursions you've gone on, you'll have been to the east, you'll have been to the southwest, you'll have been to the north part of the island. But there are so many other aspects to visit. If nothing else, just wandering the streets of Funchal. I do recommend setting out a bit and exploring a bit more of the island. One of the places that is a favorite spot from past trips is to head up to the Curral das Ferreiras, which is otherwise known as Nuns Valley. It's really a dramatic valley, which has some towering peaks. The road going in is an adventure in and of itself. And this isolated village was actually a refuge for nuns, hence the name, during the pirate attacks back in the 16th century. It's an idyllic spot for a stroll or a coffee with some local chestnut cake. And from the Era do Cerrado viewpoint, you'll have breathtaking views of this very narrow and deep valley. So that's one of the things that you could get up to. You could also go to the São Vicente caves. Actually, in previous years, these have been closed, but should be open by our next trip. And these caves were formed nearly 1 million years ago by the lava flows that created the north part of the island. And they're actually the only publicly accessible caves in all of Portugal. So it gives you a great insight into the geological history of the island. Of course, what I suggest folks do on a free day is to explore more of the Levadas, because quite honestly, for me, this is really what Madeira is all about. One of the popular ones is the Levada do Caldeiro Verde, which is a little bit more adventurous of a Levada. It has lush greenery, amazing waterfalls, and stunning views of the interior of the island. In fact, at the end of the trail, there's a dramatic waterfall which cascades down into a small lagoon. It's truly a spectacular spot, a great photo op. But at the very eastern end of the island, where you have, as I mentioned a few slides back, is where you have the oldest geological part of the island, these cliffs that rise right out of the sea. It's a great 2.5 hour round trip walk, something I would certainly recommend to consider on your last days in Madeira. From here, we head out for those going home or perhaps onto your next liveaway, and you will hopefully have had a great insight into this beautiful island and its history going all the way back to the early part of the 15th century, and what has taken place. And it's turned into this absolutely magical island. Of course, for those willing and wishing to stay a few extra days, I do recommend our Porto Santo post trip excursion. Porto Santo, which is a much smaller island than Madeira, is really a world unto its own. And the whole geology, the landscapes of the island are really quite different. But its huge, long golden beach is perhaps the number one thing that makes it worth visiting. It's a 2 hour ferry ride from Madeira. The ship leaves first thing in the morning, so you'll be there by late morning, and we'll dock on the island adjacent to this huge, long beach. After we arrive, our guide will give us a great introduction to the unique charm of the island. We'll start with this little museum called Cardina, which has some interesting insights into the history of the island. We then going to go to Quinta das Palmeiras, which is an interesting little privately built oasis that stands in stark contrast to the otherwise very arid landscape. And again, you'll be immediately taken aback how different it is to Madeira, even though it's part of the same archipelago. We'll have a delicious lunch at a local restaurant where you'll try some fresh fish or lapas, which are the grilled limpets that are a particular delicacy here. And then you'll have the whole afternoon to explore and enjoy and just wander down this beach. I challenge you to go from one end to the other. It is really a magical spot. And the reviews we got after previous visits are, we should have stayed here longer. We'll have another full day in Porto Santo with part of the day devoted to a little more guided sightseeing, but lots of time at leisure to relax. On this day, we'll visit Porto Santo's only town, which is called Villa Balera. It's a charming little settlement with whitewashed houses and colorful shutters. It really does feel like a step back in time. And talking about a step back in time, um, one of the highlights is visiting the Christopher Columbus Museum, because this is believed to be where he lived obviously prior to his famous voyage across the Atlantic. The historical accuracy of the whole thing is a little bit in question, but nevertheless, the museum gives some great context about his era and the voyages that he undertook. Once again, we'll have an amazing fresh seafood lunch. We'll try some of the bola de cacao. I talked about that before, the garlic bread, and then you'll have still lots of time to explore, maybe just relaxing and unwinding at a cafe in town or walking along that beautiful beach one more time. The boat doesn't head back to Madeira until later in the afternoon, so you've still got a whole chunk of the day to explore and enjoy this island. If you get up early enough, you might embark on a diving excursion for those that like to go underwater. The island is known for its crystal clear waters, and there's a diverse range of marine life here. And there's even an artificial reef that was created by a sunken ship. For golfers, though, you might want to actually have a chance at playing around at the Porto Santo Golf Club, which was famously designed by Seve Ballesteros. In the later part of the afternoon, we'll head back on the ferry to Funchal. We'll have one last evening before heading home the following morning. You'll depart from here. We'll take you back to the airport and you'll be on to your next adventure, either somewhere in Europe or for your return trip home. Hopefully, this webinar has given you a bit of an insight into all of the things that you could expect on our LiveAway in Madeira. It's truly an amazing place to spend a few weeks in the otherwise terrible winter months at home. But if there are more details you're looking for, I urge you to visit our website. The link to the webpage for the Madeira LiveAway is in the description immediately below this video. There you will also find a link to the actual complete trip itinerary, the detailed e-brochure, which is about 50 pages long. It has all of the details of what I just talked about. And there's also in that same link our trip-specific reference guide, which has all of the logistical information that you might want to know about before deciding to join us on this trip. Of course, there could always be further questions, and we are more than welcome to hear from you and fill you in on any details that otherwise might be missing, or for that matter, help you get signed up on our trip. And so you do that by calling our office, sending an email to Paula. She'll be delighted to talk to you and fill you in on all the rest of the information that you need to know about this LiveAway. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found it informative. I am truly passionate about the island of Madeira. In fact, I've told people before this is one of the places in the world I could actually live. I enjoy every time I get the opportunity to go back. If you like watching our new trip webinars, then you are more than welcome to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You do that by scrolling down and clicking that subscribe button. That way, every time we release a new trip, you will be notified directly from YouTube that the webinar is there, and you can hear me talk about some of the other amazing adventures that we have around the globe. In the meantime, I hope to meet you in person at one of our upcoming summer social events, or otherwise maybe on a trip somewhere. In happy travels in the meantime, and take care.